Sony has admitted that they have sidelined Japan and the PS5 launch. A launch for any console is very important, basically. It's going to set the future of what the console will be, how the console will sell. It might not really matter this year, but because the launch lineup for both consoles are pretty weak. I'm talking about both Xbox and PlayStation. PlayStation has their exclusives, but they don't really look that interesting. And again, Sony fanboys say, "Oh my God, but Miles Morales is on Sony's platform, and Spider-Man was so amazing." But it's a game that it's a game that we always play. I think people would have been happier if we got an actual sequel to the Spider-Man game as a launch title, not a spin-off game. Okay, where you get if you play the full price version, you get a remaster of a game you already played, as well. So yep, Japan has sidelined. For the PS5, it seems the developer team stressed corporate places more importance on U.S. market. And Japan and Microsoft are doing the opposite. They're trying to place more importance to Japan. They're trying to get Japanese developers to put their games on the Xbox exclusively. But Sony, it seems that the domination over anime games and Japanese games are over. Nintendo Switch is out, Nintendo Switch is stealing their exclusives, Nintendo Switch is destroying Sony and every facet in the Japanese market as well. Sony's console only sold 10 million copies. When compared to the Switch, who sold like 13 to 14 million copies, and the Switch's lifespan is far from over. Okay, this year is the third year of the Switch's lifespan, and the holidays are not even done yet, which again, consoles sell pretty well during the holidays, in Japan as well, which is New Year's as well, which is that when they give presents and stuff on that day. Because Japan, they don't practice Christmas like we do, but they still have a holiday at the end of the year that they do give games towards. And the Nintendo Switch has sold like 13 million copies, and Nintendo Switch has only sold like 68 million copies worldwide. But the PS5 is like 110 million copies. So the Nintendo Switch is actually outselling the PS5, PS4, and probably outselling the PS5 at launch as well. So yep, it's a PlayStation Japan studio has co-developed games like Bloodborne, Astro's Playroom, and Last Guardians that have been seen growing context of creators not being renewed. Meanwhile, you have Xbox continues to meet Japanese studios about big and small about accusations it's claimed. Here, Microsoft is trying to ramp up Japan sales in Japan, because the Xbox One had like no games in Japan because they just gave up on that market. But they're confident this time. Mario Bros is one. Yeah, we all know that. We all know the media is Sony fanboys. We all know they are. We'll wait until what fans actually think about Mario Bros the game. Okay. The media is the same. The critics are the same ones who popped up The Last of Us Part 2. But the game actually came out and no one liked The Last of Us Part 2. I think Miles Morales versus The Last of Us Part 2 is a horrible comparison. But again, we all know the media is basically Sony fanboys. Okay? They love Sony. Okay? They think because Sony is the company of censorship. That's what they are. Let's look at any Japanese game that's now releasing on PlayStation 4 and now PS5. They are censoring games on Sony's consoles. And I think people, even in Japan, are doing it. Because they're thinking of American audiences before Japanese audiences when it comes to those games. They have to meet Californian standards in Japan, but when they release a game, The Last of Us Part 2, PlayStation Japan had to censor the game. Okay? Which is absolutely ridiculous of Sony as a whole. And The Last of Us Part 2, we all know, was a big flop. It was a big failure. Oh yeah, it sold 4 million copies, but it didn't really have good legs when you look at The Last of Us Part 2 sales. But yeah, we have The Last of Us Part 2 sales. This is The Last of Us Part 2. This is supposed to be Game of the Year. And look at these sales. These sales are abysmal. Only selling 10,000 copies a week. Or a day. This game sold 10 million by now. But the player count, this is including digital sales as well. No one is playing this game. Only 390,000 people have returned back to The Last of Us Part 2. Okay? Let's compare it to a supposedly dead game. Okay, Overwatch. Okay, Overwatch here on the same console. Okay, Overwatch player base PlayStation. Here, number of players. So Overwatch has the same amount of returning players as The Last of Us Part 2, and this is Overwatch's sales. Here, this is actual. This is not like The Last of Us Part 2. This is Overwatch, the game as a whole. 100,000 new players. Overwatch is doing just as well as The Last of Us Part. It will soon be having more players returning back because, again, less people play Overwatch on console than on PC. As well, you know, and this is Overwatch versus The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 is absolutely pathetic as a game. It's absolutely pathetic. Yeah, it's 300,000 new players because The Last of Us is a newer game, but this is just pathetic sales-wise. We compare Overwatch versus The Last of Us Part 2 on PlayStation. The fact that Overwatch 2 is about to take over The Last of Us Part 2's entire player base because no one wants to sit through this experience twice. No one wants to sit through this experience, and this game's like getting DLC and everything. It's on the same power of player base as Overwatch on the PS4. Of course, that PS4 Overwatch's player base is more than just one console. PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, and Nintendo Switch, which, again, the Xbox player base is probably around the same amount as the PlayStation player base. They said around 10 million people signed in last month, which is probably a majority of the players on Overwatch are probably playing the PC version. Console version is probably around 20 to 2 million players, including the Switch version. No, 20 million players, including the Switch version. And PC probably makes up like 35 to 40 million players on Overwatch. So, yeah, PC basically, most people who play Overwatch play on the computer version. So, yep, that's basically it. Goodbye.